Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mi'as Hashem today we will be learning Daf Mem Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Erev Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Lamed Tes Amid Beis, in the middle of Siman Reish Samechei Sif Gimel. We're at the last two words on the page, V'Hashemen Hanoiteif, right by Mishnah Berurah Ois Cotton Zion. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Kabeis Yisrael, Hanesunim Batzara Ubashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakayim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yetziem Yitzara L'Rvacha Me'afela L'Oira U'Mishibed L'Geula Hashta Bagala U'Vizman Kariv V'Noimar Amen. On the day that I'm recording this share, it looks like things are sort of like heating up in the region around Eretz Yisrael, and we definitely have to have in mind to be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom. We have to remember that none of the players, so to speak, have any kayach over here. They're all puppets on a chain from the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom is the sole kayach. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is the only kayach that there is. Also, the Rishiv Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zechet Tzaddik Kodesh Levracha, always said that when we say in Oz Yashir, Hashem Ish Milchama, the Rishiv Zatzal said that you should know when it comes to Milchama, there is no Teva. In other areas, people look and they say, there's a Derech HaTeva. And the Rebbeinu Shalom, in many ways, the Rebbeinu Shalom sort of refrains from interfering always with the Sidrei HaTeva. But when it comes to Milchama, Rav Moshe said there is no Teva. There's mamish no teva when it comes to Milchama. So there's no such thing. This one has a bigger army. This one has a smaller army. This one has more advanced weaponry. This one has less advanced weaponry. It's all bupkis. It all doesn't mean anything because there's mamish no teva by Milchama. Hashem ish Milchama. All of the outcomes of Milchama are only decided completely, totally, absolutely by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Nothing else matters. So we have to bear that in mind. We have to be mispal that the Rebbeinu Shalom should protect everyone, the Rebbeinu Shalom should keep everyone safe, and the Rebbeinu Shalom should bring us a geula shleima, so we shouldn't have to worry about any of these things. Okay, nachzor le'inyonenu. So, just for the sake of continuity, to remember what it is that we're speaking about, let's read the words of the Mechaber from the beginning of Sif Gimel, 2 lines off the bottom near the end of the line. The Mechaber had said, Ein noistin kli b'Shabbos tachas haner. You're not allowed to put a keli underneath a ner on Shabbos, lekabel shemen hanoiteif. You have an oil lamp, maybe it's overflowing, oil is dripping, maybe it has a leak. You want to catch the oil. The oil is very valuable. You don't want it to be hoylech le'ibud. So you want to put a keli underneath the ner in order to catch the shemen. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Why? Because by doing that, you're taking a keli that was perfectly usable on Shabbos. I used yesterday the example of the 6-inch plate that you could use to serve the gefilte fish. It was a perfectly usable keli for Shabbos. Now, by putting it underneath the ner and it's going to catch the shemen, it's no longer going to be usable. Why is it not usable? Because let's remember, the shemen that's in the ner is muktzah machmas iser. When Shabbos came in by Ben Hashmoshes, this oil was inside a lit ner, and it was huktzah l'ner. It was set aside to be used for the ner. Now, would you be allowed to take oil out of that ner? No, it would be the Isser of Kibui. By taking oil out of the ner, we said you're going to be over on the Isser Daraisa, possibly, maybe Drabanan, depends on exactly how you hold, but you're going to be over on the Isser of Kibui, of extinguishing somewhat the flame. So you're not allowed to take the oil out. So by Ben Hashmoshes, all of the oil inside that ner was muktzah. It was muktzah machmas iser. Kevin shehuktzah leben hashmoshes, huktzah l'kuliyuma. That oil remains muktzah for the entirety of Shabbos, even if the ner goes out, even if the oil drips out of the ner, like in our case. So now, when you take a 6-inch plate that's perfectly usable for gefilte fish, and you put it under the ner, and oil drips from the ner into the plate now becomes no longer usable. Since the plate becomes no longer usable, you are mevatel kli mehechanoi. You took a keli that was prepared for Shabbos use, and you are mevatel it. It can no longer be used for Shabbos use. We learned 2 pshatim. Either that's akin to breaking the plate, because it's no longer usable, or it's akin to affixing the plate into its place on the ground because you can't move it. Either way, there's an issa d'Rabbanan of being mevatel kli mei heichonoi. That was the problem with putting the keli underneath the nair. Says the Mechaber Viter over here, Umutter litnoi miba'od yom. But to put that plate into position before Shabbos and leave it there on Shabbos, that you're allowed to do. It's going to become muktzah, but so what? That's not a problem. Now, says the Mechaber Viter, V'hashemen hanoitef. Okay, you took a 6-inch plate before Shabbos. You put it under the nair. Oil dripped into it. Says the Mechaber, V'hashemen hanoitef, any oil that drips into the plate, also lehistapek mimenu b'Shabbos, you're not allowed to use that oil on Shabbos. Now we're going to skip a couple of Mishnah Berurahs. Let's take a look on Mem Amid Aleph at Mishnah Berurah Ois Cotton Tests. I don't know, it's about 7-8 lines down. Says the Mishnah Berurah, b'Shabbos, you're not allowed to use that oil on Shabbos. Why not? Because, like we just said, says the Mishnah Berurah, shekvar hukta hashemes bein hashmashas. Because this oil dripped out of the lamp that was lit bein hashmashas. So bein hashmashas, it was muktzah. Why was it muktzah? Muktzah machmas iser. Because you can't take that oil out of the nair. You would be over the iser of kibui. So it's muktzah machmas iser. And, says the Mishnah Berurah, umigoy des katzoi ben hashmashas lenair, since ben hashmashas, it was muktzah, because it belonged to the nair, is katzoi l'kulayuma. So it's muktzah for the entirety of Shabbos, even though it has now escaped the nair, it dripped out of the nair, and it went into the 6-inch plate down below, it doesn't become ois muktzah. Since it was muktzah at bein hashmashas when Shabbos came in, it remains muktzah for the entirety of Shabbos. That's why the Mechaber says the oil that dripped into the plate, you're not allowed to use on Shabbos. The gamakli also betilto al yedei hasheben shenase basisla. And this goes back directly to what we learned yesterday. Once the oil drips into the plate, now the plate is also aser, because the plate is a basis l'davar aser. Okay, now let's back up and go to some of the earlier Mishnah Berurahs. The reason I skipped it is because this Mishnah Berurah is cut and test is the Mishnah Berurah that directly explains the halacha that we just learned. Now let's go back to Lamed Tes Amid Beis at the bottom line and see Mishnah Berurah is cut and zayin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hashemen hanoitef. The oil that drips into the plate is aser. So the two halachas that we've learned between the halacha that we just learned now and the last halacha that we learned yesterday was you took the plate, put it under the nair. Oil dripped from the nair, landed on the plate. The oil is 100% aser. That's the halacha that we just learned. The plate is also aser. Why is the plate aser? Because the plate is holding this oil, which is aser. Move the plate, you're going to move the oil. So you're not allowed to move the plate, because by moving the plate, you're moving the oil. And remember what we learned yesterday. You're not going to shake the oil off the plate. Technically, if this oil only landed there after Shabbos started, then technically you would be able to move the plate in order to shake the muktzah off because you want to use the plate for something else. But you're not going to, because the whole reason you put the plate there is because the oil is valuable and you want to catch the plate. So says the Mishnah Berurah now, but what if no oil ever dripped into the plate? What if you have the nair and you're afraid that oil is going to drip into the plate? It's going to drip off the nair. So you put a plate underneath the nair just in case. In case oil drips, it should land on the plate. But guess what happened? No oil dripped. So now you have an empty 6-inch plate positioned under the nair. But why did you put the plate there? You put it there with the intent that it should catch the oil. Does that intent matter? Are we going to turn around and say that since you put the plate there to catch the oil, and if it would catch the oil is muktzah, and now the plate would become muktzah, so do we say that even if the oil didn't drip, just by your intent, now the plate becomes aser? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Maybe, what if no oil ever drips into the plate? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the plate is not going to become aser simply by virtue of your machshava, that you put it there with the intent that it should catch oil. Now he brings down a very interesting El Yerabba, which this El Yerabba is based on a halacha and a concept that I think many are going to be surprised by. Ube El Yerabba Kasav, the El Yerabba writes, how about the following case? What if what happened was like this? You lit the neiros maybe even a little bit early. Instead of lighting 20 minutes or 18 minutes before Shkia, you lit a half hour before Shkia. Okay, we said after Plag, you could light as early as you want, as long as you're Makabel Shabbos when you light. Okay, so the woman lit, and she lit early. But for the husband, it's not Shabbos yet. He wasn't Makabel Shabbos. Okay. He takes a plate, and, he takes the plate, he puts the plate under the nair. You know what? I want to make the case a little bit different because of a detail in halacha that I don't want to go into right now. I'm going to make the case a little bit simpler. The husband prepared the neiros on Erev Shabbos. Okay, so on Erev Shabbos, he prepared the neiros, and he overflowed the lamps, the cups a little bit, and they're dripping oil. So he takes a plate, and he puts it underneath the nair, and the oil is dripping into the plate. It's Erev Shabbos. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, before Shabbos, he goes ahead, he takes the plate, and he empties the plate. Okay. The oil, when it fell into the plate, wasn't muktzah. When by Ben Hashmoshes, no oil dripped into the plate. Maybe the wife went and lit, and for the whole time period of Ben Hashmoshes, no oil dripped into the plate. What's the status of the plate? There's no oil in the plate. There was oil in the plate on Erev Shabbos, but there's no oil in the plate now, and there was no oil in the plate by Ben Hashmoshes. What's the status of the plate? Now, you would be very tempted to say, what's wrong with the plate? There's no muktzah in the plate. There never was any muktzah in the plate. Not during Ben Hashmoshes. There's no oil in the plate now on Shabbos. Why shouldn't I be able to move the plate? Says the El Yerabba, not so fast. Ube El Yerabba Kosav, the El Yerabba writes, if you put the plate there on Erev Shabbos in order to catch oil, and oil indeed fell into the plate on Erev Shabbos, says the El Yerabba, you know what happens now? Miskayim makshaftoi. Your intent to use this plate as a keli to catch the oil was fulfilled. You set up the plate to catch oil, and it actually did catch oil. Miskayim makshaftoi shechoshav aleha. Your intent was fulfilled. Umikri al yedei zeh kli shemalachtoi le'isser. The keli now has been changed. This is no longer a 6-inch plate for gefilte fish. This is a kli shemalachtoi le'isser. It's a kli that's designated for a use that's also on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to put a plate there to catch the oil because that's bittul kli mehechanoi. You set up this plate as a plate to catch oil. So you created a kli shemalachtoi le'isser. And now it's muktzah. Afim achakach nishbach hashemen. Even if you poured out the shemen before the zman. So you emptied the oil from the plate before Ben Hashmoshes. Yeah? You put the plate there on Erev Shabbos. Oil dripped into the plate on Erev Shabbos. You emptied the plate before Erev Shabbos. Ben Hashmoshes, there was no oil in the plate. On Shabbos yet, there was no oil in the plate. You want to go move the plate. What's the problem? You can't. It's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because you turned that plate into a kli shemalachtoi le'isser. In the first halacha that the Mishnah Berurah said, where you put the plate there with the intent that it should catch the oil, that doesn't make it a kli shemalachtoi le'isser, because all there is intent. It never happened. Oil never dripped into the plate. But if you put the plate there with the intent to catch the oil, and oil actually fell into the plate on Erev Shabbos, now there's your intent, and it actually was fulfilled. It became a plate that catches oil. So now it's a kli shemalachtoi le'isser, and it's muktzah. And the Mishnah Berurah gives us an analogy to this. Ukemoi, for example, imeniach mois ala kli miba'od yom. You have a keli, and you used that keli to hold money. You have a keli, you had a lot of change in your pocket. You took the change out, and you put the change into the keli. Even if you empty the change from the keli on Erev Shabbos, you set up this keli as being a keli to hold money. They have a muktzah, so it becomes a kli shemalachtoi le'isser. So in other words, what he's saying is like this. Let's say you have a pushka, right? You have a pushka. Pushka is made to hold money. You take a quarter, it's a brand spanking new pushka. Your kid just brought it home from school. You take the pushka, you put in a quarter. Okay? Now it's definitely muktzah. It's a basis l'davar aser. It has money in it when Shabbos comes in at Ben Hashmashos. It's muktzah. But what if you put in a quarter at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday afternoon, and then before Shabbos starts, you open the pushka and you take the quarter out? So now there's no money in it. Is the pushka muktzah on Shabbos? There's no money in it. There was no money in it during Ben Hashmashos. The answer is yes. A pushka is muktzah, even if it has no money in it. Why? Because it's a kli shemalachtai le'isr. The purpose of this keli is to hold money. So that's a kli shemalachtai le'isr. A kli shemalachtai le'isr is also on Shabbos, even if it has no muktzah in it. Same thing with this plate. You set up the plate to catch oil. On Shabbos, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. It actually caught oil on Erev Shabbos. You emptied it before Shabbos. You emptied it before Ben Hashmashos. And on Shabbos, no oil dripped into it. It's still aser because it's a kli shemalachtai le'isr. Very, very fascinating concept that we have over here. It would be the same thing. Let's say you have a purse. And you use the purse to hold money. You have a wallet. Your wallet's used to hold money. It was holding money on Erev Shabbos. And now you take all the money out of the wallet. So before Shabbos started, before Ben Hashmashos, there's no money in the wallet. And on Shabbos, Friday night, you want to go move the wallet. There's no money in it. Doesn't matter. It's muktzah because it's a kli shemalachtai le'isr. However, the Mishnah Berurah brings down v'ayin b'prima gadim. The Prima Gadim doesn't like this Eliyarabah so much. And the distinction that the Prima Gadim wants to make, I'll clue you in over here. The distinction the Prima Gadim wants to make between the case of our plate and the case of the money is a very interesting distinction. What the Prima Gadim wants to say is like this. The wallet that's made to hold money is inherently muktzah. So when it was holding money on Erev Shabbos, it was holding a dvar muktzah, and you were miyachid it for a dvar muktzah. But the plate that you put under the nair to catch the oil, olive oil is not inherently muktzah. There's nothing inherently muktzah about olive oil. Olive oil becomes muktzah by Ben Hashmashos if it happens to be located inside a lit nair. If it's at a lit nair, it becomes muktzah machmas iser. And once it becomes muktzah during Ben Hashmashos, it's muktzah l'kula yuma. But there's nothing inherently muktzah about olive oil. So the Prima Gadim says, how could you compare the two cases? By the wallet, it was holding something that was inherently muktzah on Erev Shabbos. Therefore, it was miyuchid for something that's inherently muktzah. It becomes a kli shemalachtai le'isr. But a plate that was holding olive oil? There's nothing inherently muktzah about olive oil. That's the distinction. That's the kasha that the Prima Gadim asks on this Eliyarabah. Okay, oil drips into the plate. You're not allowed to use that oil on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Nira, it would seem, afilu yesh shemen heter harbe bakli miba'od yom. Let's say you put the keli underneath the nair to catch the oil. But what you did was, before Shabbos started, it's a bowl. It's a soup bowl. You poured a cup full of extra virgin olive oil into the bowl before you put it under the nair. Okay. Now Shabbos comes in, and some oil is dripping out of the nair and dripping into the bowl. So you have 7 drips of olive oil that's muktzah machmas iser that came from the nair, and you have 8 ounces of olive oil of mamish shemen heter. This oil was never inside an air. It's extra virgin olive oil straight from the bottle. There's nothing muktzah about it. So maybe you would say that the 7 drips of oil that came from the nair that's muktzah should become bottle in the 8 ounces of non-muktzah oil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. The nira, afilu yeshem and heter harbe baklimi ba'od yom. Even if there was a lot of oil shel heter inside the keli from Erev Shabbos, v'hinicha oz l'kabel shemen anoitef, and then before Shabbos came in, you put it under the nair to catch the oil, and some oil dripped in, mikam okam aser lehistapek, you still would not be allowed to take oil out of that bowl. You know why? Because it's not bottle. Why isn't it bottle? The davar sheyesh loy matirin loy bottle. A great rule that we have in Hilchas Bittul is a davar sheyesh loy matirin, something that is now at the present time osir, but it is destined to become mutter. So, for instance, the oil that's dripping out of the nair, it's osir on Shabbos, because it's muktzah machmas iser. So it's also for Shabbos. But Motzei Shabbos, it's going to become mutter. So it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Even though it's aser now, it's destined to become mutter. Over there, we don't say bittul. Why should we say bittul? Why should we let you get away with bittul? It's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Wait 24 hours, it'll be mutter. So we don't use bittul. So over here, we can't use bittul. Ice cut and test, we did already. Now let's go on with a fascinating Ramah. Top line, Mem Amud Aleph. Haggah says the Ramah. The Ramah over here is talking about a case where you have a nair, you have an oil lamp that is suspended. We spoke about this yesterday. You have a nair, a lantern that's hanging from the ceiling on a chain. Okay, says the Ramah. Va'aser liga b'ner doilik kishehu tolui. If you have a lamp that's lit, an oil lamp that's lit, you're not allowed to touch it. Okay. Afal pi she'eino metaltaloi, even though you're not doing tiltal, the Isser of Muktzah, remember, it's mutter to touch something that's Muktzah. The Isser of Muktzah is tiltal. You're not allowed to move something that's Muktzah. So you have a nair that's hanging. Are you allowed to touch it? Says the Ramah, no, you're not allowed to touch it. Even if you don't move it. So you're not being over at Hilchas Muktzah because you're not moving it. It's still aser. Because we're afraid. Even though you certainly had no intent to move it, but it's a hanging object. We know with the chandeliers, you touch it, then it shakes. So we're afraid you're going to touch the nair, it might move. Okay, so what? Says the Ramah, v'yateh. Remember, we're always worried that if you take a lamp and you tilt it, you might bring the oil closer to the wick and make the flame grow bigger. That would be havara. Or you might tilt it the other way and make the oil move away from the wick. That will dim the flame. That would be kibui. You touch a hanging nair, says the Ramah, might not be a muktzah problem because there's no tiltal, but at the same time, it could be that it'll move a drop, and that would cause either kibui or havara, and therefore it's aser. Very interesting Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut yud. Pen yisnadneit. What the Ramah says is the whole problem over here, it sounds from the Ramah, that there's no muktzah problem here at all. The only problem is this chash that you might come to be over on havara or kibui by tilting the lamp a little bit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mashma mizeh, is very clearly implied from this Ramah. De beloich shash HaTorah, without the concern that you might come to tilt the lamp a little bit and be over on either havara or kibui, ein lachush bishum iser tiltal muktzah yedei adidud. We would not be worried about muktzah, right? We wouldn't say, oh, don't touch a hanging lantern because when you touch it, you might actually come to move it. And if you come to move it, that would be muktzah. The Ramah doesn't say that. The Ramah seems to discount muktzah completely. He says there's no muktzah. What's the problem? Shemiyateh. That's the problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the cost of a Magen Avram, the Magen Avram is very uncomfortable with this. The Magen Avram says, I don't understand. If you're telling me that by touching it, you might move it, so then that's an Isser of Muktzah. That's tiltal. Right? You're telling me what's the problem? You might tilt the nair. If you tilt the nair, that means you move the nair. If you move the nair, so that's Isser tiltal. So that's Muktzah. So what do you mean? There's no Muktzah. There's only Shemiyateh. So the Magen Avram doesn't like this at all. And in order to be metaritz the Ramah, what the Magen Avram says is it must be the Mayri Shedavar Heter Munachalov. It must be that the Ramah was talking about a case where, why are you touching the nair? You're touching the nair because you want to feel it and you want to see what it's made out of? Why would you do that? He says, must be that there's a dvar mutter. There's something hanging on the lamp. Or there's something resting on the lamp. And you want to take that dvar heter. I don't know what's on it. There's a key. I don't know. Whatever. There's a dvar heter. There's something that's mutter on Shabbos that's resting on the nair. And you want to go take that dvar heter off. Okay. In that case, that's mutter, even if you're going to move the nair. Why? Because you have no intent to move the nair. And if the nair does move, it didn't move because you moved it l'tzairich the davar aser. You didn't move the nair because you wanted to move the nair. You wanted to take a walnut that's sitting on the nair. You wanted to take the nut off the nair. Incidentally and indirectly, when you took the walnut off, you moved the nair. That's tiltul min atzad l'tzairich davar mutter. That's moving something that's muktzah indirectly, not for its use. You didn't move it because you wanted to move the nair. You moved it because you wanted to take off the walnut. That's mutter. That's tiltel min atzad litzorich davar mutter. That's mutter. Says the Magen Avram, that must be the case that the Ramah is talking about. The Ramah is saying, over here there's no kshash of muktzah, because it's tiltel min atzad litzorich davar mutter. But still you're not allowed to do it because you might be mata the nair, and being mata the nair, you might come to kivoy or havar. That's how the Magen Avram learns up this Ramah. The Mayrish davar heter munach alav roitz likach mimenu. They have a tiltel min atzad de mutter, k'moshe kaseh simin shin yud al sivches. Avaliga boy mamish, the Magen Avram says, but the mamish go touch it where you might move it. Aser b'menoyre tluya. You're not allowed to touch it where you might move it. Afilu eina ner delekes b'soicha. Even if there's no fire burning in it, so there's no kshash havara or kivui, you're still not allowed to touch it because that would come to tiltel. V'ayin b'bi'er halacha. Now I don't want to take the time to read the bi'er halacha inside, but I will tell you what the bi'er halacha says because it's so nice. The bi'er halacha says like this. The bi'er halacha says, this Magen Avram is a bit of a stretch, right? The Magen Avram seems to be stretching the Ramah. All the Ramah says is, even though there's no muktzah here, you're not allowed to touch it because you might come to kiva or havara. It seems very clear from the Ramah that there's no muktzah here. And the Ramah doesn't say anything about a dvar heter being on the nair. The Magen Avram seems to be stretching this Ramah because he's stuck. Says the bi'er halacha, there could be a much simpler teretz. And that is, according to an Arzarua, it seems that this Ramah is based on an Arzarua. And the Arzarua wants to say that touching the nair that's hanging and making it move, that is also akin to tiltel min hatzad. Even though you're mamish touching it directly, but in a way it's tiltel min hatzad. What's the basis of the heter of tiltel min hatzad? The basis of the heter of tiltel min hatzad, let's go back to the Magen Avram's case. You have a walnut that's resting on this hanging lantern. You take the walnut off, you make the lantern swing. The Magen Avram is masking that that's mutter. Why? Because did I move the nair directly? No, I only moved it indirectly. Did I move it for its purpose? Did I move the nair because I wanted to move the muktzah nair? No, I moved the nair l'tzarech davar mutter. I moved it because I wanted the walnut. Says the Arzarua, when you touch something that's hanging, right? You wanted to move it? You didn't want to move it. You looked at it. You said, it's a very pretty finish. What is that finish? You wanted to feel it. You had absolutely no kavanah to move it. It's just that the nature of hanging things happens to be that with the slightest touch, it will move. The Arzarua seems to say that movement is so rachuk from your kavanah that becomes akin to tiltel min hatzad. In that case, the Ramah is exactly like the Ramah says. The Ramah says a hanging lamp, even if it's going to swing by your touch, that's mutter. That's called tiltel min hatzad. So why aren't you allowed to move it? Because of chash of kivoy and havar. Ois Kat Yud Aleph says the Mishnah Berurah, V'yate. The problem over here is that you might tilt the lamp. Why is that a problem? V'yate Hashemen al hapsila. You might end up bringing the fuel closer to the wick. V'yischayev b'shom mavir, in which case you would be over an avara. Oy kashe yiracheu, or if you distance the oil from the wick, yischayev b'shom mechabe. V'ayim b'simen reish ayin zayin siv gimel d'bener shel shava like chashina lazeh by a wax candle. We're not worried about this. We'll see that in simen reish ayin zayin be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Now let's move on to Sif Daled, 3 lines down. Says the Mechaber, Noistin Kli Tachas Haner. You're allowed to put a keli underneath the nair, not to catch dripping oil. You're allowed. You have a suspended lamp. It's not dripping at all. It's all fine. All the oil is nice and neatly contained inside the lamp. But you know why you want to put a keli there? Because we know that sometimes sparks come off of a burning lamp. You want to put a keli there to catch the sparks, so that the sparks shouldn't ignite something, or so that the sparks shouldn't damage your table or your tablecloth. So you want to put a keli under there to catch sparks. Is that a problem? Well, what problems could there possibly be? Well, based on what we learned yesterday, you might be tempted to say that it's being mavat kli mehechanoi. Well, let's remember what we learned yesterday. We learned yesterday that if you want to put a keli underneath a lamp to catch the pecham, the like little coal type piece that falls off the tip of the nair, that is a problem of mevatel kli mehechanoi. Why? Because even though once that coal burns out, you could shake it off. This is not like the oil. The oil you're not going to shake off. Your intent is to catch the oil because it's valuable. But the pecham, the coal that comes off the tip of the wick, has no value. So therefore, what will happen? It'll fall onto the plate. It'll go out. And then technically speaking, you could pick up the plate. You want the plate. Tiltel min atzad, you're picking up the plate. Indirectly, you're moving the pecham. But you're doing it l'tzarech davar mutter. You want to use the plate. So you'll take the plate, you'll shake off the pecham, and you'll use it. But we said you can't do that. Why can't you do it? Because when a pecham, when a little coal-like thing falls off the tip of the wick, it doesn't burn out immediately. It takes 30 seconds to burn out. For those 30 seconds, you're not allowed to move the plate. Because if you move the plate, you might extinguish the flame. So for 30 seconds, you are mevatel kli mehechanoi. That's what we learned yesterday. And even though you're only mevatel the kli mehechanoi lefi shah, even though it's only temporary, it's only 30 seconds, it's still being mevatel kli mehechanoi, and it's still aser. Now let's take a look at the halacha that we're learning today. Today you want to put a keli underneath the nair, not to catch the coal. You want it to catch sparks. Is this a problem of being mevatel kli mehechanoi? We're going to see it's not. Why? Because the nature of a spark is, as soon as it falls, it goes out. There is no being mevatel kli mehechanoi. It extinguishes immediately. So you weren't even mevatel kli mehechanoi lefi shah. Okay, now how about another question? You have the keli. There might be some ash left from that spark. Now, do we say that you have a keli that has muktzah on it? No. It's totally inconsequential, that ash. You can mamish pick it up and shake it off. Says the Mechaber, you could take a keli and set it up under the nair in order to catch sparks. The words of the Mechaber are that there's no substance in that ash. What the Mechaber sounds like he's saying is, there's mamish nothing there. And the truth is that when you learn the Gemara that this is based on in Masechet Shabbos, and you learn the Rashi, what the Gemara seems to be saying is a combination of two things. First of all, there's no bittul kli mehechanoi, because like I just said, there isn't even bittul kli mehechanoi lefi shah, because the nitzotzis mamish extinguishes right away. So you were never mevatel kli mehechanoi. And then, as far as the ash being muktzah, it is muktzah because it's noilad. There was no ash here before. This ash came into existence on Shabbos. So it is muktzah. But it's totally inconsequential. And because it's totally inconsequential, it cannot render the keli muktzah. But now let's see how the Mishnah Berurah learns this. But first, let's read this. And there's no bittul kli mehechanoi like I explained. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting your base. Noistib kli, I feel a b'Shabbos. You could do this even on Shabbos. Why are you doing this? I cutting your gimel. You want to catch the sparks. Shalheves, these are little flames. Hanetefes min aner that drip off the nair in English sparks. And you're doing this kedei shelo yudlak mashatachtav, so that nothing should get ignited from these sparks. Ois cutting your dalit. The Mechaber said you could do this because there's no mamish b'nitzaitzis. There's no mamish here. Shemiyad, and now let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. First of all, Shemiyad hein koven. These sparks extinguish immediately. So what's the point of that? Well, like I explained, since they extinguish immediately, you're not even being mevatel kli mehechanoi lefi shah. It's not like the pecham that fell onto the plate where it takes 30 seconds to go out. And for those 30 seconds, you can't move the keli, because if you move the keli, you might extinguish a flame. No, these nitzotzis go out immediately. Then the Mishnah Berurah says, and you could also move the keli even when the ash from the nitzotzis is in the plate. You could still move it. You don't even have to shake it off. Why? Ve'ein kan bittul kli mehechanoi af l'shah mu'etes. Miu ha'efer shel nitzotzis asel l'taltalan. But to move the ash directly, you want to stick your finger into the plate and you want to push the ash to the side of the plate, that you can't do. That's also in tiltal, the heavy noilid. So the Mishnah Berurah is walking a little bit of a tightrope. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, see, the words of the Mechaber were, there's nothing here. Sounds from the Mechaber like there isn't any Afer here. From Rashi and Masechta Shabbos, it also sounds like there isn't any Afer here. But some say that there is Afer, and the Afer is Noilot, so the Afer is Muktzah. So what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you is, look, we'll cover all of our bases. You could put the Keli there because there's no Bittul Kli Mehechanoi. There's no Bittul Kli Mehechanoi because the spark extinguishes immediately, so there was never a time that it was also to move the plate. So there's no Mavatal Kli Mehechanoi. As far as the Muktzah asering moving the plate, because you're not allowed to move a keli that has muktzah on it, even if the muktzah only got onto the plate on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, but ash, it's totally inconsequential. It sounds like from the Mishnah Berurah that you don't even necessarily have to pick up the plate and shake the ash off. No, it's totally inconsequential. But you want to touch the ash and move the ash biyadayim, move it directly, that you can't do because it's muktzah als noilad. Ois katan tesvav. You're allowed to set up this, did we do Tesvav? No. Now let's go to the next halacha in the Mechaber, which is very, very interesting. 4 lines off the bottom, Aval. So, we said, you're allowed to take a keli and put it under the nair to catch the sparks. But how about if somebody wants to do something else? Somebody wants to put a bowl full of water under the nair so that anything that falls into the bowl will extinguish in the water. Says the Mechaber, but you're not allowed to set up a keli full of water under the nair, and that you're not allowed to do afilu mi'ba'od. That you're not allowed to do even on Erev Shabbos. And the explanation that the Mechaber gives is because by doing that, I'm going to teach the words literally. By going ahead and putting a bowl of water under the nair, you're hastening the time that anything that falls will extinguish. If you didn't have a bowl of water under it, so anything that falls down will fall down, and eventually, very quickly, it will flame out. But if you put a bowl of water underneath it, it's mamish going to go out immediately as soon as it hits the water. So you set something up that will hasten the extinguishing of the fire. And that the Mechaber says that you can't do. Now, this needs really a deep dive, but we don't have a time for mamish a deep dive. But what I will tell you is like this. This halacha is based on a Mishnah and a Gemara in Masechta Shabbos. The Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos says the halacha. It says you're not allowed to put a bowl of water under the nair, even if you do it mi'ba'od. Comes along the Gemara, and the Gemara does a dive into the Mishnah. And the Gemara says, why not? The first suggestion that the Gemara has is, this must be Shitas Reb Yosi. Shitas Reb Yosi is that gram kivui is aser on Shabbos. To do something that causes kivui is aser on Shabbos. So to put a keli full of water near a fire, so that when the fire comes and hits it, it will bust and it will go out. Gram kivui, Rabbi Yosi says, is also on Shabbos. Rabbi Yosi says gram kivui is also on Shabbos. Over here, we're saying that the gram kivui of setting up the bowl with the water is even also on Erev Shabbos. Why is it also on Erev Shabbos? Gzera. If we let you do it on Erev Shabbos, gram kivui, you're going to come to do gram kivui on Shabbos. That's the first attempt that the Gemara has to learn pshat in the Mishnah. But the Gemara says it can't be. And the Gemara brings a raya that can't be pshat. So the Gemara says, okay, if that's not pshat, what is pshat? So the Gemara says, no. This is aser, even if you hold that gram kivui is mutter. Why, says the Gemara? Because this is not gram kivui. This is not gram kivui. You know what gram kivui is? Gram kivui is when you take a keli full of water and you put it near a fire. That water is contained inside a keli. There's something being mafsik. There's something that interrupts between the fire and the water. There's a keli. The gram is that you're locating it there, and if the fire hits it, the keli will bust, the water will come out, it will put out the fire. That's gram kivui. This is not gram kivui. Why? Because over here, you're putting a bowl of water. The spark that's falling off the nair is directly exposed to the water. There's nothing interposing between the spark and the water, only air. And you're putting it right under, so it's directly going to fall in. That's not gram kivui, That's kivui. And Tosfos makes another point. Tosfos says another reason it's kivui is because if we're going to allow you to set up a bowl of water underneath a nair on Shabbos, then you know what might happen? On Shabbos, you're going to see sparks falling off. You're going to fill up a bowl of water. You're going to bring it to the nair, and you might lift it up very close to the nair, and you might actually touch a spark with the water. That would mamish be kivui b'yadayim. So we Zikha can't allow you to do this on Shabbos. Once we can't allow you to do it on Shabbos, we don't allow you to do it on Erev Shabbos either because of Gzeira. So that's Pshat in this Mechaber. This Mechaber is coming directly from the Gemara, and I'm learning Pshat over here, Lefi Tosfos, and also according to an Aruch HaShulchan. So what the Mechaber over here is saying is, you're not allowed to set up this bowl under the nair. You know why? Because to do this on Shabbos would be kibui b'yadayim. Why would it be kibui b'yadayim? Because there's nothing interposing, and also because you might actually bring it up to the spark and put out the spark. That would be mamish kibui, because now you're mamish causing it to go out sooner. Since you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos, you're also not allowed to do it on Erev Shabbos as a gzeira. Against that backdrop, let's take a look at what the Mishnah Berurah wrote here. Now, the Mishnah Berurah, Bedafka, I feel, was very, very vague over here because the Mishnah Berurah knew that he couldn't do a deep dive into the sugya. That's not the nature of his pirush. And this would have required a very deep dive into the Rishonim. He could have made maybe a hakdama in the Bir Halacha and gone into this, but he chose not to. So the Mishnah Berurah says like this, Eis Katan Tezvav. You're not allowed to do this, afilu min ba'odyom. You're not allowed to do this even on Erev Shabbos. Now, it's very clear that the reason you're not allowed to do it Erev Shabbos is because of Gzeira that you might come to do it on Shabbos. Against that backdrop, the Mishnah Berurah has a very basic problem. Wait a second. We learned in Reish Nun Beis that you're allowed to set up something so that a malacha should happen on Shabbos as long as it happens without your involvement. We said you're allowed to put the grain into the hopper of the mill right before Shabbos and then walk away, even though the toichen, the grinding, the malacha, Issa Daraisa, is going to happen on Shabbos. It's happening without your involvement. You put it into play on Erev Shabbos, it's going to happen on Shabbos. That's mutter. So the Mishnah Berurah wants to know, why is this any different? You put a bowl of water underneath the nair. So you put into play a malacha to happen on Shabbos. Then the tzaitzis is going to fall into the water and go out. Why is that problematic? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Even though we said you're allowed to put a malacha into play on Erev Shabbos and allow it to happen on Shabbos without your involvement, why don't we make a gzeira? Why don't we say you can't put the grain into the hopper of the mill 5 minutes before Shabbos, because if you let you do that, you might come to do it on Shabbos. That's what we seem to be saying here. You can't put the bowl of water, which we're saying is an act of kibui, you can't put it there on Erev Shabbos, because if we allow you to do it on Erev Shabbos, you might come to do it on Shabbos. From Reish Nun Beis, it sounds like we don't make such a gzeira. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Shani Hassam. That's different. Da'akol yoidin shehu malacha. By the mill, everybody knows that toichin is an issa daraisa. It's one of the labates malachas. Everybody knows you can't grind wheat on Shabbos to make flour. No one's going to make that mistake. But over here, somebody might think that there's mamsh no isser here on Shabbos. Somebody might think, what isser is there here? Why is it also for me to fill up a bowl of water on Shabbos and put it under the nair? What isser am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I'm going to put a bowl of water there and I'm going to walk away. So fine, a spark might fall in and go out. What is the malacha did I do? So someone might make that mistake. And why is that problematic, says the Mishnah Berurah? Because I like what I told you from Tosfos. The yesh lachosh, what we have to be concerned with is shema yagbia hakeli imamayim. If we're going to allow you to do this on Shabbos, you might pick up the bowl of water neged hanyitzaitzis, right by the spark, the yechabe oisan, and mamish put it out b'yodayim. That's the problem. And you see, he brings it down from Tosfos. Okay, Eis Katan Tezayin, Mipnei Shemikarev. All right. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kasav El Yerabah, the El Yerabah writes, B'Shem Isav Heter, in the name of the Sefer Isav Heter, Kishayei Sakonas Teleka Chas V'Shalom. If you're mamish afraid of a fire, if you see an air and sparks are continuously falling off, and your mamish afraid it's going to make a fire, Mutar Liten Kli Malimayim L'Kabal Ani Tzotzis, then you're allowed to do this. Then you're allowed to put a bowl of water under it. Well, according to this, Imroya Ner Shenichpaf. Sometimes you have a candle. I've seen this happen on Hanukkah when people have candle menorahs, especially, let's say, the 8th night of Hanukkah. You have one of those candle menorahs that have the shamish stuck in the middle, elevated above the rest, and now you have 4 burning candles on this side, 4 burning candles on that side. They melt the shamish candle above, and now it starts to bend over, and it could fall off, chas v'chalila, and ignite a table, or ignite something paper that happens to be over there. So says the Mishnah Berurah, according to this El Yerabah, if you see a nair that's bending over, and you're afraid, v'yipal al shulchan, rashoy lahamitachtav kli malimayim, you'd be allowed to put a kli full of water underneath it. V'ayin b'prima gadim b'shem efakfik b'kadina shalis of a heter. Prima gadim takes issue with this of a heter. V'nira, and it seems, says the Chavetz Chaim, deyesh lahakal b'makam atchak al yedei cotton. Under pressing circumstances, if you have such a worry, get a cotton, get a minor child to fill up the bowl full of water and put it underneath there on Shabbos. Okay, I was hoping to finish the Siman, but we're going a little bit late, so we're going to stop over here. Mitzvah Hashem, we'll finish out the rest of the Siman tomorrow. The schus of Torah should be begun on Gans Klal Yisrael. Rabbi should bring Yeshua's refuahs parnasit sheduchim to all those in need, and we should be zoichet to see the Biaska El Tzedek, the Beher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.